All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. If you have not had the chance to check out our first book, 13-Step Guide to Success, it is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback. Pick it up. Let us know what you think. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you joining us. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps and our YouTube channel, _Misfit Nation. This will keep you up to date on the latest episodes as they release. The Misfit Nation also allow you to hear the amazing stories of our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest is a personal development specialist who has worked as a behavioral coach for clients and top organizations all over the world. After 2 sudden, unexplained cardiac arrests at a young age, he began to explore more different perspectives with clients that come with any profound, life-changing event. If you're living, you're not dying. If you're living, you're dying. I'm sorry. It wasn't uncommon for him to teeter on unconsciousness, even at times while working with a client, requiring him to prioritize his own energy and time masterfully, and assisting clients to do the same. So without further ado, let's welcome Ryan Lindner to the Misfit Nation. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, Rich.
I'm glad you agreed to suffer through a little bit of this with us here on the Misfit Nation and share your story with the Misfit Nation as they sit here and as the audience does here, a military family here, Ryan. He's in hostile territory, but he's doing great things for God and country up there. And thanks again for taking your time. If you don't mind taking a few minutes here to tell us a little bit about yourself, about your journey and how you came to where you are now.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was a behavioral coach for many years. I've always enjoyed just helping people see things a different way. I specialize more in transitions. So people who are leaving a career, such as the military, retiring, kind of helping them with that, helping them see their blind spots. So we're looking at their personal habits, their communication, maybe a big life event, and I'm helping them get through those things. I did about 6,000 sessions for the military, actually.
Wow.
So for many years, I did sessions for the military. I don't take individual clients so much anymore, but I do a lot of group stuff now. I do a lot of educational programs, webinars, things like that. And it's really all designed to help people again, see those blind spots. I've had counselors, psychologists, military leaders, all kinds of people as clients. And my job is to help them see themselves a little bit better so they can be at their best.
Awesome. And that's a lot of clients to have helped, especially in the bustling military world. I'm sure transition is a huge problem within the veteran community. And not really that it's a problem to get out because you're getting out as soon as you join the military, but how you act when you take those boots off the last time, that's really is paramount to how you're successful be on the next few days, few years of your life as you move forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've seen this. One thing I do is I track a lot of patterns and am involved with a lot of studies as well. And one thing I've seen, especially with the military, is, someone will be in the military 20 years plus, and it's very difficult. It's a lifestyle, right? So when you leave that lifestyle, it's very hard to say, well, who am I now? I was a soldier for many years. That's who I was. That was my identity. And, a lot of soldiers I've worked with have felt like that loss of identity a little bit. And they don't know where to go from there. And it's not just in the military. I've seen it across all different industries where people, they thought they were a role, and it turns out they're a lot more than that. And that's why I think, working with the military is so near and dear to my heart, and helping people specifically through those types of retirements, because they think they're that role, and they kind of have an identity crisis of sorts when they get out.
And I've seen it a lot. People like me, when I got out, it was like, what do I do with my hands after I did it for 22 years? Because you do the same thing repetitively for 22 years and it's hard to turn that switch off right away. So I took a whole year off to find my purpose again in life and do things better for me and my family after that year of just basically letting it go and becoming a different person after that year.
Yeah. And one thing that I work with clients a lot on is they feel like, um, after being so long in the military, or really in any profession, what I've seen in general is that people don't often see their lives. They don't often see themselves until they go through a trauma of some sort. So what I mean by that is most people, go throughout their day to day, their to-do lists, they get super busy, and usually it takes a trauma for them to really have that really real look at their lives and what they're doing with it. So um, someone goes through something big, like a medical scare like I had, a car accident, something like that. And what does a trauma do? It pulls you into the moment. And that's where people really go through that self-reflection. And certainly in my case, I had a couple of cardiac arrests, and I was actually working with clients at that time. So you see your time, you see your identity differently when you go through something like that.
Definitely. And sure, having two of them happen to you at a young age,
Yeah.
one it's unexpected. At a young age, it's statistically not a expected thing to happen. But when it happens once, okay, that's weird. Twice, and you come out of it both times. That was almost like a sign that you need to take care of you better, but also show how you're taking care of yourself to help others.
Yeah. And I think when you go through something like that, you realize you're not a role. And, I would be literally hooked to all these heart devices and with wires. And I would sometimes be um, in a session with a client. I did mostly a lot of virtual sessions. And I remember just, being hooked to all these things, and problems sound different when you go through something like that, right? You're what's worth your time and energy. It just, you just look at it differently.
Right.
And you realize you're not a title, you're not a role. And you reevaluate your life, you reevaluate what you're doing with your time. So after that happened, I really dedicated a lot of what I did to busyness, helping people sort of get unstuck. And they most people come to me who are just so overwhelmed, stressed. Maybe they have kids, a career they're juggling, all kinds of things, and they come to me a lot to help them sort of get out of that rut and find a way to move forward.
Definitely. And as we spoke about transitioning, we spoke about getting through a traumatic event. And then a lot of times people are reinventing themselves at that point. What's the best way for them to become more attractive as they are moving into a professional or even their personal life?
Well, I think they have to realize that they're a person, not roles, and people can feel that. People, I think regardless of what direction they go in, a different career. They're just trying to improve their lives in general. It's to it's having boundaries, um, not losing themselves in constant doing, like to-do lists, and losing themselves in those things. I think it's about, yeah, again, it's really about boundaries, and realizing that none of that, a lot of what we do day to day, it doesn't matter in the end. Not a bit, not a bit. And you can't see it now, but you will. And it might be at the end of your life. It might be after a traumatic event like I had, but things will look differently down the road. Um, I had a client once who was a military reservist getting ready to retire. And she was also a student finishing up school. She also worked full time. And as she retired from the military and finished school, she found herself, with a lot of these sort of existential changes where um, she's she didn't know who she was anymore, and we had to really work together on really having those boundaries, because what most people do is the busyness is something that sort of creeps up on you, as if without your knowing. right? I mean, the most common excuse I hear people for not accomplishing their goals is life happened, right? They got busy, um, and we and I said this earlier, we can't see ourselves, and we don't realize that busyness is nothing more than just a series of little micro decisions about what's worth our time. And so I work with a lot of people on boundaries, on looking at what's really a priority, and helping them get unstuck.
So it's kind of like trying to give them guidelines to set up better personal habits as they move through their days, their weeks, their life, and to make things better, and of course stay out of their own way.
Exactly. And again, most people can't see themselves, and that's why I've had a lot of even counselors, psychologists, all kinds of people as clients. And I realized, we're all just human. We're all just human. We're trying to figure it out. And I think busyness tends to snowball, so, from day to day life, we tend to collect things that make our stress, our busyness more uncomfortable. And we don't realize that busyness, again, is really just decisions. It's just a series of choices that you made about what's worth your time. And again, that looks very different at the end, but we don't know it. We don't know it. A lot of clients I've had just thought they were so overwhelmed with their goals, with their lives. And change is going to take getting out of your comfort zone. It's going to take courage. It's going to take making big choices. And not a lot of people are ready to make those types of choices.
Definitely, a lot of people don't like to find themselves uncomfortable or outside their comfort zone, as you said. So if they have to try something new, it really gets them into a bad way. So I mean, there's different types of people, of course. Everyone has different lifestyles. What would you tell an introvert about simple ways to come across more confident? And on the other side, what would you tell an extrovert to not sound overconfident?
Now, a lot of my clients wouldn't guess this, but I am a hardcore introvert. Now, when I'm in sessions, I tend to be upbeat, and I try to be, motivational. They would never guess this, but I think for an introvert, there's a lot of pressure for an introvert to feel like they shouldn't be that way, or they need to change that about themselves. A lot of introverts I've worked with have gone through that, like, I feel quiet, I feel timid, and as if there's something wrong with that. So I have found through working with a ton of introverts is once you make it okay, you'll be okay. Once you make being introverted nothing to be ashamed of, once you own it, that's when it sort of dissipates a little bit. So for me, I think just embracing it. Some of the best leaders are introverts. There's so many strengths that come with being an introvert. I've known a lot of introverts. They think things through very clearly, often very analytical. They are often soft-spoken, and they are often great listeners. They have a lot of qualities that make them great leaders. And so my advice to anyone who's an introvert is really just to own it. Stop making it something that's wrong with you. Stop wishing that you were different. And I think once you make it okay, some of that anxiety decreases, and suddenly you can be more confident with other people. So I would say top 3 or 4 things to do. Number 1 is own it. Make it okay. Slow down. When a lot of people are nervous, they tend to go real fast and they fidget a lot. And I would say slow down, be present in your words, and stop. You don't owe anyone an apology for being who you are. And I think, again, once you make it okay and you slow down and you're deliberate about it, I think you come across more confident.
Definitely. And And how about the person who's an extrovert who is forthcoming right away? How do you make them not sound overconfident?
I think the best thing an extrovert can do is allow others to feel heard. And so maybe with every communication, they have a pause. And there's a model I work with a lot of clients on. And the first thing you do is when in any interaction, you're going to pause. You let the other person get it all out. You let them fully vent, fully finish what they have to say. And if you do that, if you can just pause for just a moment, they are going to listen to you more when you start to speak, rather than each person speaking over the other. And other things, so listening for sure, that pause. Another easy thing they can do is to validate what the other person's saying. So that's really just reflecting it back to them and using what I call connector statements, which is really just empathy. And just to give you an example, so you pause, you let the other person, finish speaking or whatnot. And then oh man, I remember, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I totally understand how you feel. I totally get that. So you want to just say something simple like that, that's going to let the other person know they've been heard. Just reflect it back to them. And by doing that, you're going to, sometimes the most confident person is the quietest one in the room. There's just an aura about them. Some of the best leaders I've ever seen, they have, you can just tell when they walk in a room, and they've got not what I call prove it energy, and they don't need to prove anything, right? It's just this feeling. So they're not necessarily the most extroverted, the most confident, the most talkative person ever. So for an extrovert, I think just, slowing down, take that pause, and just be in that moment. And you will come across more confidently.
Definitely. And I like to tell people to listen to hear instead of listen to speak. So that way, like you said, they have the natural pause between me and you speaking, or whoever you're speaking with, and you actually absorb what they're saying before you automatically have something to say as they're speaking, like you referenced earlier, talking over each other, and then you wind up in no one really gets anything across because no one's really confidently listening to each other.
You're right. And we aren't used to those types of interactions. I mean, we're not used to those real genuine interactions. And I'm sure this is, I've told this story a whole bunch of times, but this happens to people every single day, where a lot of the way we communicate is just an automatic knee-jerk reaction. So for most people, what happens when you go, this morning they went to the gas station, or they went to the coffee shop or whatever, what's the first thing they did? Well, they probably passed someone and said, "How are you?" Right? And the other person, what do they say? They say, "Good, you?" Really fast. It's not a real answer, right? It's just it's a pleasantry almost. "Good, how are you?" "Good, you?" It's not a real interaction. Or what else do they say? They say stuff like, "Not too bad." And if we think about those types of automatic reactions, because that's what those are just reactions, we're not present in those moments. If you think about that response, "Not too bad," that's interesting to me. So you're bad, you're just not too bad.
Too bad.
Or they say stuff like "hanging in there," or "it's Monday," like being Monday's a terrible thing, And most people are, again, they don't mean anything bad or anything, they don't have bad intentions, but they don't realize how they're coming across. We're not used to those real interactions. We're used to transactions. So most people are very transactional. And another way to be more confident, it's going to require being present in the moment, but it's really, you can't be transactional. You've got to be interactional. So imagine if someone asked you, how are you doing? And you gave them a real answer. Most people would look at you funny, like, especially if it was I'm doing terrible, today's terrible, they would look at you like, oh, I'm sorry I asked you.
Yeah,
But some people, what I like to say is when someone asks me how I'm doing, I give them a real answer. Now, yeah, I don't tell them I'm having a terrible day, but I try to give somewhat of a real answer. And if I ask someone how they're doing, or how they are, I mean to ask, and I'm prepared to get a real response. And just saying something differently, people can feel that. People can feel that. It's like that saying, people don't always remember what you say, but they always remember how you make them feel. And when you are interactional, again, people can feel it. I've had thousands and thousands of sessions. These little subtle changes that you make, people, they're starved of it. They're starved of that real interaction.
definitely. And over the last 2 years, as the whole world went through lost interaction or face-to-face interaction, I shall say,
Yeah.
since the social climate was kind of cut off by by what was going on in the world, still going on now. They kind of lost that interaction or the inability to interact with others live because they didn't know what to do. Especially, I've seen it with a lot of youth right now, middle school, high school, who lost those 2 years of actual having social interaction. Then they all of a sudden go back to school and have no idea how to act in that kind of setting. And now they're having all kinds of troubles readjusting to that lifestyle. And I'm sure it's happening with adults as well. Those who were working from home and all of a sudden, all right, you got to go back to work. It's hard to actually get back into that break room or get back into a meeting and just try to sit back, relax, and listen to one person speak without trying to get your voice heard, since it hasn't been heard for a couple of years.
It is hard, and I've seen that as well. I think it's just people have had to um, redefine how they communicate. And I've been using Zoom and all those things for a long time, but for a lot of people, it's just a totally different way to communicate. And I think the most common thing I've seen is, we're using other methods of communication. Um, what you pay attention to changes. In other words, you have to pay more attention to things like tone. Um, for a long time, some sessions I did weren't even on camera, so they were just over the phone. And so you would have to really listen in and kind of read between the lines with people and have a really high emotional intelligence to really understand where they were coming from. And so you could connect with them, so you could connect to them. And I think when people are reactive, in other words, what we were saying at the beginning, like they're so busy and you know, they they're just not present. And some people go their whole lives and don't know what it's like to have a real interaction, because their whole lives were just this automatic, reactive type of existence.
Definitely, and a lot of those reactions are they throw people off that are actually looking for an answer, and then they kind of get that blown off look, and so they just go on with their day thinking, "Dang, that guy really must have been having a real bad day." He had that automatic response to me that kind of was weird, and I didn't really know what to say at that point, so I just left him wallowing in whatever was going on with him.
Wow. People can tell if you hear, if you're listening, or uh, everyone just wants to be heard. And I think when you allow that for other people and you allow them to be heard, that's where relationships come from. And they might not be able to put their finger on it, but they feel it. And that's what I teach a lot of big groups too, and organizations, and help them kind of shift their communication. And when you look at leaders, I always view leaders and leadership and management are two very different things. But I've seen this in military. I've seen it in big companies as well. Is leaders don't have the bad ones don't have the ability to do what we're talking about, which is to have to treat people like people and not roles. Not, um, they seek to learn more beyond that. And you've got to have that presence in order to do that.
Definitely, you got to make sure you're present in the moment when you're talking to someone. That really helps out a lot. Like even if it's just at a dinner, be present, be there, look at them, look them in the eye, or look up when you're walking instead of looking at your phone. Be present in your situations. Things little hacks can get you through life like that. Just little things to make things a little better for you and for those around you. Being a good human, and that'll help things out a lot. Ryan, you brought up a lot of great tips and tidbits here. How does someone get in contact with you to learn more, to get maybe their office in line with you to learn better ways to hack the office communication?
Sure. You can check out my website. It's RS Lindner, my last name, Lindner, rslindner.com. And halfknownlifebook.com also. There's some information on both of those websites. There's links to my book, my social media. They can go to any of those places on the site. So
Okay, and I'll
that's
put
the
all
best
those.
way.
I'll put all those in the show notes so that they can click easily, so they don't have to go hunting. And
Thank you.
it's been great having you on here. Thanks for taking some of your time to share your story and your knowledge with the Misfit Nation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Have a good night.
You too.